Welcome to the May 19th Hartland Selectboard meeting. It is 5:30. One of our colleagues is joining us remotely. The other colleague hopefully will be here shortly. I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the May 5th meeting and the May 12th hearing.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes. I will second.
Thank you, Jim and Trace. Any comments?
It's nice to see it all on one page.
Good. Keep it concise for everybody.
Yeah.
Just to a point, didn't we approve Nicole's liquor license that meeting?
No.
No, I think that we did that in the second meeting in April. We did the Skunk Hollow with the first meeting in May.
Okay.
Yeah, Hartland Diners was done in April.
Any comments? Trace, you're okay?
No.
Clyde, you're all set?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
All right.
Motion passes. Next, I would entertain a motion to accept the orders through today, the 19th.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Jim. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Trace. Any discussion? Okay.
Couple of easy things. So Green Mountain Power bills,
Yep.
do we have a job trailer that we power? Wasn't sure, it just caught me off guard. It was like the third line item.
Give me job trailer. I don't believe we have a job trailer that we're powering, so I don't know if that's just mislabeled or.
What page are you on?
It would be
Page 4.
There you go. So on the Green Mountain Power third line.
I can look that up. Well, what was your second question?
The other one was just, I was just surprised what difference between the Route 5 lights and Route 12 lights.
Yes. Yeah. The Route 5 lights include the ones up in North Hartland.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, do we still have the same arrangements for Mr. Lamb for the fertilizer?
Correct. And that's why that's the invoice for like $1,000. That's our half, which is like a long-standing agreement that goes on the fertilizer for the hill behind the park and ride lot.
Love to do a soil test, to look for it at the amendments before we sort of do that again next year.
Is the agreement to keep the land open?
I don't believe there's an actual agreement. I think this is just kind of long-standing practice, long-standing like kind of verbal agreement.
Yeah. In the last couple of years, we were approached to actually put an apple orchard in for hard cider, and we opted to not do that, to stay with Mr. Lamb for that.
But it's town land?
It's town land. It's managed by the land trust, so it's in conservancy.
Okay.
So we are it's limited in what we can do with it.
Okay. And right now it's
It's just open ag field. Yeah.
I was surprised, I guess I shouldn't be, at the cost of the asphalt from Bike Pike for the hot box.
Yep.
Okay. I don't have a good reference, but it's a good chunk of money for the small amount of part.
Yeah, it was not a small amount of hot mix that went out.
Okay.
Somewhere in the order of like 5 tons. So,
Oh, well, okay.
yeah, they were doing 2 tons a day for the better part of, for 3 or 4 days.
Primarily the Cucci Road?
Primarily the Queechy Road, but they hit a bunch of other spots throughout town as well.
Okay.
There's some potholes on some aprons and.
Great. Yeah, the Cucci Road's holding up well. Okay. Any other questions on the warrants? All in favor of accepting the warrants through today, May 19th, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Clyde. Motion passes. Moving on to adjustments to agenda, we have two distinct executive sessions this evening that we will not be taking any action at, but we do have, we have to warn them separately.
I'll make a motion, we add those executive sessions to the agenda.
Thanks, Jim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trace and Tom. Okay. Are there any public comments?
I have a,
Hold on, Bruce.
I
Clyde,
had
did
a
you?
question. I left a message with John about putting on the agenda the Martin Memorial Building heat pump.
So that'll come up we will bring that up, Clyde, I got your message, I will bring that up in my notes, in my update to everybody.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we're set for adjustments then?
Yep.
Okay, Bruce?
Where I live up on Greenpot Road, apparently a huge branch from a tree fell and closed the road. I've heard that it was either Saturday. I ran across it on Sunday, coming down, and there was a fellow named Bob Gray, who does a lot of work in the area, was on the other side of this huge thing with his tractor and a chainsaw. And he went through the effort of cutting this. This was almost as big as what was on the Weed Road that the town dealt with. But it was a Sunday, it was 12:30. He cut this whole thing up. He opened the road up. I don't know how long he was there because we turned around and went down Dansmore Hill Road. What I'm curious to know is, does the town have a fund that can pay some professional like this who's doing it? I mean, he doesn't live on Greenpot Road, but he travels it, who spends the time and the effort to do this on 12:30 on a Sunday afternoon, when the town is not readily available to do it. Is there a way to reimburse someone for his time and effort for that? And if not, can a fund be created for this kind of thing? Because it does happen.
Sure. I'm not aware of a.
So there is not a fund. If and when we become aware of those situations, the road crew does respond to incidents over the weekend. So if people want to volunteer their time and manpower, that we are very thankful for them.
Okay,
but
so you're saying it is that he volunteered to do that?
That is correct.
Okay, and so now, what is the town's responsibility to get out there and deal with something like that? Is there a time limit? Is there, because someone said it actually happened Saturday afternoon. Now, I did not go out on Saturday, but it makes it sound like it was more than 24 hours. So what is the town's responsibility during storms?
When we become aware of things that fall across the road and are blocking traffic, we notify the road crew and they go out and they respond to the best of their ability to make it open for traffic.
If we have lousy weather, does anyone go out and check?
We do some preemptive work.
Did you think what happened on Saturday was kind of lousy weather? It was like hailstorms and all kinds of stuff like
So
that.
it's summer, so it does rain. So, I was not here in town.
It's okay.
Well, I mean, the road crew is not gonna sit in the town garage all weekend waiting for branches to fall down. So
This was not a branch.
I hear what you're saying. We do the best that we can.
I know where you're coming from, no problem.
Did the road crew respond?
It's okay.
They did work over the weekend to clear branches that had gone down.
Right, but if nobody calls it in, they're not gonna.
We are not aware of it. We don't respond to it. That's correct.
Okay.
But I should say, we also get BJ also has direct communication with dispatch. So if VSP gets a call about a branch going down, that message gets passed along to them as well.
Well, if you do decide to pay, $200 an hour, 2 hour minimum for that.
Got it.
tree on Best Road.
Duly noted. We don't pay.
I mean, Tom, did you go down the other day below your house and start cutting that tree up, or trees?
It was actually a little bigger than what I wanted to do. So I did call the town and they came within 2 hours.
Correct.
So what should someone do on a weekend if something happened?
It was on a weekend, it was a Friday night when I called.
So,
And they were there for Friday afternoon, I forget. So, and then the town also subcontracts with someone to help out as well.
We can, right, and in that
So,
instance, the
yeah.
road crew was unavailable, so I contacted the fire chief and we were able to coordinate
I was
enough response.
going to work, so it didn't happen on,
Sure.
and I had to turn around and go
Yeah,
all the way back
Yeah.
down around Town Farm Hill Road. So if it happens on
Bruce, the damage that happened on Saturday night was quite severe throughout town. Roads were not passable up in my area, and the town addressed them today. I've also been lucky to be in a neighborhood where my neighbors and I go out with a tractor and do some clearing. It's a little scary because town doesn't want us doing it from a liability perspective. But it's a hard nut to crack as to when, given the 65 miles of road that we have, when they're trying to go out.
I'm not denigrating the town.
I don't hear you doing that.
What I'm trying to find out is if someone, I mean,
But
it's
I
not like
think, but I
there's a
think the
little-
answer is yes.
call the town.
If somebody calls in an issue after a storm on a weekend,
And who do you
the
call?
town, you just call the
Who do you call?
main
You can call state police, as John said.
Right,
Call state police.
if it's midnight on a Saturday, you can call dispatch and or the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
They know how to get a hold of me. If it's, weekdays and weeknights, please call. We'll take care of it to the best of our ability.
Yeah, we do have dispatch, and also it's kind of like having a situation take place where you need police. So when you see something that occurs in the town and like, okay, there's a tree down across the road, you're welcome to call the sheriff's department, and that is in our town report.
Yeah, and it's on the website.
All right.
Yeah.
So, all right, I came across it that someone had begun to deal with it.
Right.
But you did bring up a subject that I'm interested in as well, and that is, so Good Samaritan Act. So Bob Gray is a good friend of mine, and he is really good with chainsaw. He's always got one in his truck. The question is it okay for us as a town member, if you're not a crew member, to grab your chainsaw and start cutting up a tree?
Correct. I believe there's like liability protections for you.
Good Samaritan Act.
Correct. I believe there are protections for you to do that.
Generally, the neighbors take care of them
Yes.
unless, like in your case with Bob, I mean, if a huge tree.
Right, or the ones on
sometimes-
Weed Road.
The one there was 3 of them there.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, and it was like, okay,
I'm just kind of curious.
yeah.
If there's a fund. for that kind of thing.
There's-
I'll make sure Bob
Let's-
gets some
let's-
beer.
Yeah, we definitely should,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know, I'll call.
We should, yeah,
We'll reach out to him.
actually thank them. Yep.
In my neighborhood, it's a
I mean, the town could probably.
Excuse me. Phil Sherry had
The last thing,
Yeah.
the town could probably go up the way that they did down below Tom's place and do everything on the sides of the road and do it up there.
Right.
Okay, Bruce, is there anything else? I don't want to cut you off. but
No, that was it. No, that's-
There's others.
I'm done.
Chris, you have a public comment?
Oh, Sherry's had her.
Yeah, Sherry had her hand up.
For me, what came out of this is the communication is on our website. You said you could call,
If you call 911,
but
you should be
we
saying,
don't have any numbers for our town administrator. So
we
what
should
you're saying is to call
really clarify the
dispatch.
911 piece.
Right, so you called dispatch,
Dispatch on the weekend, maybe that's something like that on the website. For off on the weekends or, when, call dispatch.
That's a nice,
It's on the website.
yeah, if it's not on our website, maybe we can put that on there, that's great.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, they have all the emergency management information at that 911 for Hartland.
Right, but it also should be, right when you get on the website, there's information right there.
Good point.
They've pretty deep through that website to get some of this.
Point noted, thank you, absolutely.
Are there other public comments?
Hi, Chris Hickenberg, Hartland Four Corners. I'm going to read it because people know I can kind of go on. I want to be really clear about it. I'd like to, regarding the select board meeting of May 12th, having watched the short special select board meeting on May 12th, it was astonishing and distressing to hear the exchange at the end, and I want to make 3 comments about it. They are around civility and respect, the vital role of town commissions and special committees, and encouraging or discouraging active participation by townspeople for the benefit of Hartland. To keep it brief, this is all I have to read. First, civility and respect. We know civility is the formal politeness and courtesy in behavior and speech, respect a feeling of deep admiration for someone or something elicited by abilities, qualities, and achievements. So there was an extended discussion about the town planning timeline, leading to a protracted denunciation of the current plan by the select board co-chair. The perceived deficits of the plan, he stated, needed extensive revision, as the HPC, Hartland Planning Commission, was not responsive to the contemporary needs of the town. Another select board member then pointed to the 2023 HPC survey results as important to the town plan. The co-chair scornfully dismissed this as of no consequence, quote, "I could care less," adding that he didn't care for the survey as it was, quote, "biased." Hearing this was astounding. I found it rude, uncalled for, and inappropriate at this meeting. Then the select board chair heaped on additional negative comments about the survey, again uncalled for. These were personal opinions, not a collective select board position, as pointed out by another select board member. In this and other comments at the meeting, one gets a clear indication of negativity towards the HPC on the part of some select board members. Sadly, this is not an uncommon occurrence, but is particularly disturbing set of attacks. Note that the HPC 2023 survey was the task of the HPC. The select board strongly voiced the necessity of gathering current public opinion to inform the town plan changes. The HPC collectively decided on a format, used the services of a professional Hartland resident with a history of formatting and analyzing surveys. The survey was publicized, completed by a solid representation of 608 residents and non-resident landowners. A summary report was created along with a public presentation on results, all within the allotted time. At no time in this process in 2023 were objections raised. Now the survey is fodder for ridicule at a public meeting, which leads to the second point, the vital role of our town commissions and committees. Effective town governance relies on an incredible level of expertise across a mind-boggling range of issues. How can 5 elected select board officials have the background and knowledge to make informed decisions on Hartland's behalf? However dedicated, there's not the physical time to research, formulate, and act on the hundreds of demands that come to the select board. Of course, the select board cannot do this alone. Town managers are one important resource, as are state and regional consultants, but appointed commissions and committees are essential for gathering, analyzing, and summarizing information in their specific areas of expertise that the select board can use to help guide their decisions. These groups also serve to broaden town participation and investment in outcomes. Our cadre of Hartland volunteers performs essential services for the select board and thus to our town. And these commitments are not light. Take the recently maligned Hartland Planning Commission. Working for several years on a town plan, they met weekly for months on end to hammer out changes to align with local, regional, and state requirements, as well as input from townspeople. Untold hours were spent outside of the meeting time to modify maps, consult with experts, connect with the select board, etc. And that's just for the town plan, not the many other important issues that have been their domain over the years. Or consider the policing committee. We're on there. A short-term problem-focused committee on which I served along with Trace and also with Tom and others. Our role was to learn as much as possible about the policing issues in our town, the way other towns had addressed the problems, Hartland's options. Our work included gathering public input, committee research, field trips, discussions with experts, then working together to distill that information for select board action. These are but a few examples of the many ways Hartland citizens share their expertise and do yeoman's work on behalf of the town. We come with a belief that the work is important and that our efforts have real value and meaning. We expect information collected will be given due consideration by the select board. And frankly, given the complex nature of our world today, these groups are even more an essential part of the framework that allows the select board to make good decisions, which leads to the third and final point, active engagement by Hartland townspeople. When the incredibly hard work and sacrifice of a committee is publicly tarred, and in a conversation where it was completely uncalled for, one has to wonder if this is how other town volunteer efforts will be rewarded. When there is a clear feeling that some of the select board do not respect one of the town's commissions, creating an uncomfortable sense of discord between the select board and one of these groups, how does that affect others who might think about possibly joining a commission and donating their own valuable time? Were our efforts on the policing committee simply a token nod of seeking citizen input? Are some members of the select board so expert in so many areas that they don't need the rich collective knowledge that resides within Hartland? Our townspeople are an invaluable resource. Public criticism seems counter to the goal of community participation. 2 members of the select board were working hard to bring up the perspectives of different parties in the discussion on May 12th, asking the select board members not to speak from individual bias, but rather from a collective position. I encourage the rest of the select board to listen to this wise counsel. When you opine, to speak with one voice, as you are representing the select board, not yourselves. When there are differing opinions between the select board and the town committee, go directly to that party, rather than a public lambasting or cutting them out of the loop. That is the honorable and civil thing to do. We townspeople should have confidence that there is mutual respect shown publicly in courteous behavior and deeply felt through acknowledging the diversity of opinions that naturally exist in any town. So I share those comments with you, and I'll hand you these for your reference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I want to personally apologize that I was out of line in some of my comments, and that I respect the work of the planning commission. And so I do apologize to them, and I will work with the planning commission, and as we talked about as a board, we'll work with the planning commission to make whatever changes we feel is our role as a select board we need to make. But I apologize, I was out of line.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I'll certainly take all that under your consideration. Other public comments?
It's not online.
Okay. Moving on to old business. The first item is the Station Road update. This is Trace and...
Yep, so at the last meeting I had a meeting with the church trustees last Wednesday evening to talk about kind of possible solutions. It became evident at that meeting that the trustees are open to putting out more clear messaging when there are large events about the restrictions that are currently in place on Station Road, and to make it aware to those in attendance that ticketing can and will be occurring if they continue to park illegally. In addition to that, we are working, BJ will be ordering new no parking signs. Some have become quite old and faded, so we'll put new no parking signs up that are reflective of the no parking areas that are in the adopted traffic ordinance.
Okay. Trace, do you have anything to add?
Just painting the curbing?
Yep. Oh, sorry, yep, and we will be painting the curb this coming summer. It's kind of been on the back of people's mind for a while, but because the sidewalk there is asphalt and the road is asphalt, there's not a clear distinction, so we'll paint it yellow. It will hopefully help to delineate those two things.
Mrs. Clark?
May I give a comment? Signs
Signs.
on the north side as well.
So where there are current signs, and then if we need to put new signs to be reflective of, to reflect the no parking areas that are designated in the Hartland traffic ordinance.
So on the north side, in that 2-lane section, because it says in the ordinance, the only parking on the north side is in a designated parking lot.
Yeah, so whatever it says there, yeah.
So I think, doing a lot of traveling up to Colorado last year and even in last week. Town sign roads, road signs were extremely helpful. And when you enter Station Road, there's not even a center line to indicate that it is 2 lanes. So if you're gonna paint, so put a center line in there and then indicate that it goes to the left, down to one lane. And also indicate, there's no transparency regarding the information that, the work that you've already done, you put stakes up. No one knows what the stakes are for and why they were changed. So transparency in identifying the fact that the town initially took too much land and that we're, staying within our lane.
Well, there's no,
I don't know if the town took too much land. Personally, we pulled it back so that there wouldn't be a conflict, and so it would be unnecessary. That was so I didn't look into the legalities of whether the town owns the property or not. I just simply moved it back because I felt it was the right thing to do.
Right.
But if you want to, we could go through all the legal system and try to figure out whether we're on their property or not. I think that's a little, I think it's unnecessary, but it's possible.
Well, that was the first I heard of that, because there were railroad ties.
There were, and we cleaned them up and took them out because they got plowed into the bushes.
Right, well, the town kept, when they brought their big bucket loaders down and pushed all the snow on private property.
Sure.
So,
And that happened.
One time.
Well, it probably.
no, it happened for
Well,
over 13 years.
But it happened,
So,
and we've made an adjustment with that by moving that property line back and taking those out. So that's a moot point. It's been fixed. So we're moving forward here. And the signage is also being fixed. So that is another point that's been taken care of.
yeah,
So let's move forward.
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This has been a long time unfolding. Okay. Moving on to the Hartland Board and Commission pledge, which is in the packet. This has been something we've been discussing and revising for some number of meetings.
Yep, so there was just a few other kind of minor language tweaks, right? So they're all active statements. They're all currently now active statements. I pledge to, and you will see that the statements themselves are reflective of being those action statements. And again, the intent here is we can pass this along to all boards and committees that are created in town and existing in town, starting with the select board.
So excuse me, are you looking for an action to adopt or?
Correct.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
That we adopt the pledge as identified at the May 19th board meeting.
I second the motion.
Any discussion?
Is the motion to adopt it for the select board or to adopt it and then thereby pass it out to all other boards and commissions in town?
I think I think we need to adopt it for the select board. We need
Okay.
a version for committees.
Correct. So we can take this and take out select board and make it a blank, which we can then bring to the boards and committees.
Right.
I just want to make sure that the motion was
There's probably
here.
some other,
Right.
wordsmith that has to
Yeah.
happen.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, seems to me anyways, that it should be a consistent across all the committees in town, but maybe somebody finds something, there might be a minor inconsistency, but this is what we would have for our own. Is that where we're heading in this?
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree. And
so we would send it to them as a draft. The others, they take a look at it. If you don't have any questions, adopt it.
Okay.
it should just be the first line as a
Yeah,
member.
that's what I was thinking.
There's another reference to the select board in the middle, but again, and I can take this out to the other groups in town.
And then let's add a date to it so that we know when we did.
So the
This is-
motion, Tom, the motion says the 19th.
I said the 19th.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. When do we take it?
We can put it on
Next week.
we can put it on the agenda for June
Okay.
to take the pledge.
Okay.
So this now becomes a policy of the board, and it's like in our policy packet, and we have such an animal like
That
that.
will do at the organizational meeting
Yeah.
in April of every year, or March.
Okay, got
I
it.
mean, technically, we just need to sign it.
Technically, we just need to, you just need to sign it.
Right. And again, it's thought that this will be in conjunction with the new state code of ethics.
The ethics policy.
When they come out.
If there's, you could sign it now,
It's fine.
and then we could be done with it and not have it on the. Okay. Okay, we can just be done. Clyde, I can get your signature next time you come into the office.
So moving on to new business, the next item is a liquor and tobacco license for Mike's.
Correct. So nothing changes. This is just a new license for this year. There's 3 licenses in there. There's a second-class liquor license, beer and wine, a tobacco license, and a tobacco substitute license, all of which they've had before.
Okay.
So,
I'll make the motion that we approve the second-class license for beer and wine, the tobacco substitute license, and the tobacco license for Mike's Store and Collectibles.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Trace. Any discussion?
I assume the town has received their portion of the funds.
correct, yep.
What's tobacco substitute?
Tobacco substitute is like vaping accessories, things along those lines. Yep. I had the same question. I looked it up.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to approve of Mike's state licenses, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving right along, we have a update on the Four Corners Children's Center. We have a lease and also some changes.
Correct. So potentially there was, I thought this would be farther along, which is why it was on the agenda. Val, as you may or may not be aware, is looking to retire and sell the business to another entity. There is an interested party down in Windsor who operates a similar facility. They would like to expand into Hartland and kind of maintain the same operations. They didn't, due to illness, they didn't have the opportunity to meet with their board, so they weren't as far along for the discussion tonight. But in essence, the lease is up at the end of June. We would just be revising the lease to probably start June 1 if they're ready for it, to change the name on the lease. Again, nothing really changes. They'd like to keep it the same, potentially expand into the front rooms at the facility, but no other changes.
Meaning they would have more children there?
Meaning they would potentially have more children, specifically infants, which is apparently a big demand in the region, in the state.
And would the prices change or anything like that?
Their pricing would not, for like the rent we would charge?
No, for what they would charge.
No, in fact, their pricing structure is lower than existing prices.
But they're expanding capacity.
They're expanding capacity. They get funding from the state, from both the state of Vermont and the state of New Hampshire to provide these services, so their rates are lower than a private facility.
Similar to the nursery school.
So, I mean, I didn't do a rate comparison, but yeah, similar to
Not
the similar concept,
similar
right?
process.
Yeah.
It's good information. The thing I worry about is, are our buildings safe for infants and toddlers?
Right. I think they have to be inspected.
So inspected, so I think there's, the big gap there would be things like sprinklers, which we've talked about it, which there's not we're not required to have sprinkler buildings. So, but again.
But we're not required because
I think there's, I recall looking at this when we were talking about the rec center maybe 6 or 8 months ago, because of the incredible cost that it would be to retrofit all existing facilities in the state with sprinklers. Okay. Just looking at, I think we got like a quote a couple years ago for $200,000 or so for just the rec center building. Yeah. So there's significant costs there.
Any other questions at this time? Because we have no action.
No action, right, no action yet. We'll revisit this after they've had a chance to meet.
We could do some due diligence about this present owner and when.
So I did, in anticipation of this.
Yeah.
I went and visited their facility, their existing facility last week.
Okay.
It looks, smells, operates much like like a childcare center would. Okay. It's nice and clean. They're very, very polite. They're very, very friendly. Kind of involved with the community, have, parent work days and things like that. Right. So,
do they expect to keep the same staff?
They would look to be hiring more staff. Okay. Yeah, they're keeping on the staff that wanted to stay, from Four Corners,
Okay.
and then bringing on more staff because they would have an increase in the number of kids.
Okay. Okay, moving on, we have an update on the assessment office. Bob, you're on.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Thank you. As you know, we've had a transition from elected listers to an assessment. We're going to be contracting with an assessment company. And as an assessor myself, I'm obviously standing in place of coordinating this transition, of course, in conjunction with John. And so I've had access to more resources. There's one of me, and if I need something or I need help, I have help available. I'm happy to say that things are moving along pretty good. It comes at an inconvenient time because this transition depended on the town meeting, which was in March. And so then right after that, we have the if you will, ramp up to the grand list.
Mm-hmm.
And so it puts some, a little bit of having to reassign and do things in a different way. Happy to say it's working out. Like I say, I've been working closely with John on this, and if I have a need, there are lapses or there are gaps in things I know, even though I've been at it for 4 years, there are places where I need a little help. I talk to John and we work together. So I'm happy to say it's looking good.
Great.
At this point.
Okay. So you're saying that the July 1st deadline, you're feeling comfortable with that, we can meet that?
If we're talking about the June grand list apps,
Yeah.
yes, we're planning on meeting that schedule. That's in 2 weeks. In the event that didn't happen, there are things that you can do to move it out a few days or whatever you have to do to handle any unforeseen circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So none of this is new stuff. This is common in the assessment world here in Vermont.
Great.
So,
Good. Were there any changes coming out of the state legislature as they wind up that are going to affect this process that you are aware of at this point?
there are multiple things going on. Unfortunately, I haven't been, as you may know, I'm the vice president of VALA, which is Vermont Assessor and Listers Association. VALA itself is tracking that very closely.
Okay.
My role has not been to spearhead that. And it's a very complicated and multifaceted issue.
Yeah.
So it's being looked at. Yes, it's coming down the pike. I wish I could give you some exact metric as how it's going to pan out, but it's in such a state of flux at this point.
Yeah. Okay, great. Great.
If you have any other questions.
I'm just thinking about the process. So the grand list is going to be in June, right? Tax bills go
The
out
abstract, the initial abstract.
Yeah.
in July.
Yeah, and so,
And is there an appeals process after that?
yeah, grievance, there's a grievance, yep.
All right, so it's like the July, August timeframe.
Yes, and we're going to follow the same procedures that have gone, have happened in the past. We're going to do the same type of grievance schedule and warnings and all that.
The one thing we were hoping to avoid is if there's a need for we can formally request an extension, Bob can, through the board in June. If it goes too far, then it changes when tax bills get mailed out.
Right.
So we're actively working.
Right now we're on path.
Right now we're on path, right? And we're trying to stay on that path so we don't run into that.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
And the tax map will be coming in the months ahead.
You're talking about the online?
Yeah, so the online tax map, so right now we're trying to, sorry, Bob, I don't
No,
want
that's okay.
to. Well, right now, we're really trying to focus on getting the grand list taken
That makes
care of.
sense.
The tax map is we're aware of the shortcomings and the need to update it, but that's a July project and not a June project.
Okay. You have your hands filled.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. Bob's been doing great.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for Bob at all?
Just, do you have enough help and so on? Is it
Yes,
working?
I'm
Okay.
coordinating with John, if there's something I need or there's a lapse of certain functionality, we work together and
Okay, great.
get that straightened out.
I mentioned I need support.
Well, it'll come up. I'll bring it up. Yep.
Okay, Clyde,
thank you so
are you all
much.
set? With, he's muted. Okay.
I think he's good.
Okay, good. Moving on to the next new business is the Vermont State Police contract. It's in our packets.
Yep.
John, you want to step?
Sure.
Much to step through, but,
Yep, so this is basically the same contract we had from previous years, looking to keep the Vermont State Police as a secondary resource to the town. We have the Windsor County Sheriff's Office for 32 hours a week. We have historically also had a contract with the Vermont State Police for an additional 8 hours a week. I met with the sergeant out of the Royalton Barracks recently who said they would like to continue in that and to kind of dispel any rumors that, that they were not looking to do kind of community policing. They're still very active in that role and they would like to continue in that role.
okay.
So their rates did go up, which does push us and then the Windsor County Sheriff's rates are also going up for the next fiscal year, which does push us over budget a little bit. I think if we see the Vermont State Police billing us at 8 hours a week, which has historically not been the case. So I think that if we move forward with both new contracts at the increased rates, we're likely to still come in at our target budget of what we set, which was $145,600 for policing services between the two. And if we're starting to see those 8 hours a week coming in regularly from the Vermont State Police, we'll have to, do our due diligence to make sure that we come in non-budget, and finding cost savings in other places.
Okay.
How much did they increase, do you know?
Their increase was about $9 an hour.
Okay.
And the Windsor County Sheriff's was $10 more.
And was that $9 both the labor as well as the overhead, or just in general?
Just in general, it's one rate, yeah.
I'll make the motion to approve the Vermont Department of Public Safety Traffic Control and Enforcement Services contract.
Can I have that? Thank
Could you add a date?
Effective beginning July 1st, 2025.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Trace, thank you for.
For 1 year, we should just go for 1 year, right? That's all it is.
That's what it is, yeah. Through June 30th, 2026. Any additional discussion?
And just put the amount of the contract.
How much is the state police contract?
$42,248.96.
For 8 hours a week?
Yeah, they have a rate of $101.56. It includes overhead.
My question is, when are the 8 hours, when do they do the 8? Does it mean they're available to be called?
So this is directed patrol 8 hours per week, not on call time.
And is there a specific time that they do it?
We leave that up to our contracted agencies to determine the best places and the hours to patrol in Hartland.
Okay.
If there is a need or specific, if we're aware of an incident or a continued issue, we can let them know. And then they can direct the resources as they're able.
And what if the state police has to do more than 8 hours? What if there's something specific going on? Do we pay extra?
So again, this doesn't mean that they're only going to work 8 hours a week in Heartland. They will continue to respond to 911 calls as needed. This is directed patrols only.
Okay.
Yeah, there's two separate entities. They are the state police and they are on a call for us in case of emergency.
Correct.
Okay.
And then if they have time to fulfill their commitment to getting us more support, they do that, but they usually don't because they're so short on troopers.
Correct. Yeah.
But we get our 8 hours a
On the
week.
ship?
Not historically.
That's why John was saying that if it starts to get to the point where we think that they're gonna fulfill that, we may have to say no more, because we don't have the money for the record.
So
yeah.
right now, just for the sake of the conversation. They've built us
Friendly amendment.
short of 50%, and we're 1 month left in the fiscal year
With the
for this past year. So,
They're short on, that's why we got the sheriff's department to start with, because they were short on time.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand.
That's a really good question. Call a vote.
Can we have a friendly amendment to add the 42,000?
Well, I mean, we're proving the contract details are in the contract.
Okay.
I mean, if,
yep,
we don't have to recreate the contract on the
no,
motion.
this is it.
Okay. Okay, then any additional discussion?
I see.
All in favor, say
Sounds
aye.
like it's showing.
Oh, yeah, no, it seemed,
Thank you, Clyde. Motion passes. Okay, town manager update.
Sure. Well, where do we start? So first, I'll start with.
Start with the 550.
So you want to start with the heavy lifting? We'll start with the 550. Everybody's favorite vehicle in town. We did get a trade-in estimate for it. It was quite low. We are now reaching out to see if we install the engine in it, does it increase our trade-in value on it enough to make it worth putting the engine in? I mean, the trade-in estimate we got from it was $3,500. What? Right.
No engine.
No, but there's a new engine in the back of it, in the bed of the truck.
Right.
the trade-in would be with the new engine in the back?
Yeah.
Not in the engine
I
compartment.
get it, but
Yeah, or we spend,
Do you spend the money to put the engine in first?
exactly, if we spend the $4,000, does it make the trade-in value then $15,000? So that's the question, that's the back and forth that's happening right now.
The warranty of the new engine included a minor labor rate compared to what,
It included we'll call it a nominal labor rate that was not sufficient, about half the cost of actually putting in the new engine.
do you know what was the dealership saying to us as far as installing the whole package?
Martin had been negotiating with them, and I think we had landed about $5,000 to install it. That was with
That was our cost.
That was after the warranty covering X number of hours.
Does the Kelly Blue Book and those kind of,
So this, it's a tough one because it's a tough one to kind of blue book a 6-year-old diesel truck with a new engine sitting in the bed of it. It doesn't come up with regularity.
I'm laughing, this is pretty sad.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. So we'll see what our contact with where we purchase trucks from now comes back with, if we can get an increased trade-in rate on that.
To be honest with you, I think at this point in time, it'd be worth us to pay someone to come and take the truck.
Yeah.
Because it's been a lemon and it's been financially killing us.
Right.
So we need to get rid of it.
It has been. So
And I got really nervous with your comments. I didn't know if you were moving toward, let's put it back on the road, which I,
no, we are not, no, it would be whether we put the engine in, does it increase the trade-in value enough to make it worth
cover all the costs.
to make it worthwhile? Or we're gonna get more than $3,500 if we spend that money. So the saga continues.
35 plus 5 plus profit.
Right.
So 10.
So it'd have to come back at, 10 plus, yeah. So we're trying to figure that one out. Since we are talking about road equipment, I'll just first start by saying the road crew did, again, we had a somewhat dramatic storm, and we've had a bunch of trees down in the past couple of weeks. They've been doing a fantastic job of keeping up on them, especially over the weekend, so kudos to the road crew. The culvert that was mentioned on Mill Street that Rob Andrade mentioned a few meetings ago that drains off of the interstate
into an open field.
Has gotten dramatically worse since Rob mentioned it. It's still not threatening town infrastructure. However, it's not only is it an eyesore, it's a bit of a public safety hazard at this point, if it gets any closer. We did get some estimates to kind of backfill it with stone, probably in the $10,000 range to do that work. That's if it doesn't need to be designed.
Yeah.
But is that on private property?
It is on private property, but if it continues to migrate towards our road, it will become our issue. For the time being, I think that the solution is we don't do anything.
Can we as a select board right to V-Trans and the federal government, because it's an interstate culvert that the state is saying they have some responsibility, but now since it exits onto a town land, everyone's running away from it.
So we can certainly ask the V-Trans district. In my experience, that conversation is not going to go very far.
We've probably met with them a half a dozen times on this,
And
and they're saying is that they're not causing
Right,
the erosion.
right. I think you would have to be able to
Yeah.
tie it directly to the construction of the interstate, which would be a very tall task.
Yeah.
I think our best thing might be is we could try to negotiate where they would do some type of a cost share with us.
Yeah, we
know.
have, the Conservation Commission has been documenting this for quite some time.
Yeah,
And we met also with the Natural Resource Conservation District on this.
yeah.
They had some people, I mean, we've met with a bunch of different folks, so we could try again.
Yeah, so I'll reach out to our contact at the V-Trans district to start the conversation again. But again, at this point, no action is needed because it's not threatening the town road.
Well, I politely disagree because it's, for the past number of years, the Planning Commission has been bringing to our attention that this is no longer just a small little kind of sinkhole and it's getting bigger and bigger. So yes, it's moving toward our road.
Yep.
But it's each storm, like the type 5 hurricane, I'm sorry, thunderstorm, probably did more damage. So please do reach out and we'll show up outside of V-Trans with our little signs saying please fix it.
So sticking with road issues, we are continuing to work with the contractors who submitted bids for the engineering work on the Jennyville and Densmore Hill culvert design. All the bids I mentioned came back higher than anticipated. So we've reached back out to folks to see if they could limit their, reduce their scopes a little bit to come in more in line with the available funding that's being done under a structures grant.
Funding.
That's grant funded, correct.
What's the amount of funding that we have
18,000
to do the engineering work?
to do the engineering and design work.
And how much did it cost to do the Katy Brook culvert, the engineering work?
I was not here for the Katy Brook culvert.
I don't remember the number, but I thought that was close to that.
We did the Jennyville culvert further up the road was about 25,000
For the engineering,
for the engineering work.
which is much more complex.
Yeah, so there's a chance that we can get an increase in funding, but the grants division at V-Trans wanted us to see what we could do to bring those costs down before they amended our award amount.
Makes sense.
Percent terms, how much above were the estimates coming in?
On average, they were about 100% more than the grant.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah. Again, sticking with roads, we just signed our contract with Two Rivers to do the road erosion inventory. That's being grant funded with the better roads. So just in time to find out where our roads are eroding. Might be. So that work will be taking place over the summer. We're going to come back to additional highway stuff because there's a broader discussion to be had about equipment. And then, so on a few other things, Bob mentioned kind of additional staffing that is needed. We're working to finalize a contract with a former lister, Doug Linnell, to help Bob push through and finalize the grand list for this year. Doug lives next door. He's been an invaluable resource. So,
Independent contractor?
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And we have breakage money so that we can use that.
Correct. Yeah. The Public Utilities Commission has closed the ITW tower filing. Their advance notice so it was somewhat unclear what closed meant. So it essentially means that their advance notice has lapsed. If they want to, at this point, if they want to refile, they would have to file a new advance notice and start the process all over again. It doesn't mean that it's done and they've decided to walk away. It just means that the process has been delayed a little bit.
That's good news.
Right, that is good news. Due to federal funding cuts, we had been a part of a BRIC grant, building resilient infrastructure, something, as a part of a Two Rivers application to update our hazard mitigation plan. The federal money for that grant program was pulled. We do need to have a hazard mitigation plan in place. It allows us to get federal dollars post-disasters. So Two Rivers has reached out and said that they could likely cover half the costs with their own. So looking to the town to see if we want to come up with what would amount to $4,000 to $5,000 to update our hazard mitigation plan in partnership with the Two Rivers Regional Commission.
When does ours expire, or existing?
That I don't recall off the top of my head. They take the timeline to get them approved, because they have to get approved by FEMA can be lengthy. So, I think there's an opportunity to do that kind of in-house. This isn't a planning commission. This isn't a different board or committee. This is kind of in-house work that we would just have to do in addition to everything else. But it is a valuable tool that we have.
You have to have it.
Yeah.
And we have to have it, and if we're going to get the grants from FEMA, that has to be in place.
That's correct.
Are you suggesting an action, or are you just
I'm
notifying?
updating. We're still trying to figure out what the timeline is. We've put together a contract if we wanted to go down that path, and that would come to the board for approval. The Historical Society, Clyde, do you want to update us on the Historical Society's request?
Well, we just wondered where the town was on putting it in. It was discussed at our meeting on Monday that we could fund it if we need to, with permission of the town to install it. And we weren't sure exactly what the price you got before was.
Right. So we had talked about this maybe 6 or 8 months ago. The basement of the Historical Society gets quite humid in the summer. They run dehumidifiers all summer long, which need kind of constant daily maintenance. We got 2 quotes for heat pumps to help with the humidity down there. One was just over $10,000, which included all the electrical work. One was $6,500, which did not include the electrical work. They're going to have to drill through the existing kind of concrete wall to vent it out to the side, and then build a small roof so kind of snow and water doesn't, continually hit it. But we used ARPA money in the past, or we used an unallocated fund balance to do this, to put in a new furnace at the North Hartland Fire Station. So, my recommendation would be there's enough money left over in that fund balance to cost share this with the Historical Society if they are interested in pursuing that.
So is it, just out of curiosity, is it a town-owned building?
We do own that building.
It's the former library building.
So why do I feel like we already approved?
We didn't approve, so we talked about it, but there was a discussion to get additional quotes, and we never revisited the conversation. Because it was, I think, late summer, and then it was not hot and humid, and I think it fell off of my radar, so. But as we're coming back into summer.
Clyde, does the Historical Society need to make a vote about the cost sharing?
We didn't take an official vote. It came up and nobody disagreed with it at the meeting, let's put it that way. The idea is that a lot of our collection is maintained in the basement of the building, and it's paper and it's quite well, affected by humidity, but I'm sure that I can get them to agree to at least do 50%. Really better.
Yeah.
But, do we need to take an action now?
We do.
To authorize you to do this?
We don't. I just wanted to bring it up. So again, there's approximately $600,000 left over in that unallocated fund balance. We do have some kind of large expenses that we've talked about previously, the stairs at buildings and things like that. However, this is kind of seems like a simple one-off and a good use of that money, and was identified in the ARPA committee report.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. Yeah.
okay. So we will pick the best contractor and work with the historical society to get that taken care of before it gets humid down there.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's come up a couple times in the meeting. There's an issue with kind of trees existing in town. We've talked about it in the past couple of meetings.
That's a pretty broad statement.
Well,
More than one.
thank you.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and we continue to have, when there's these heavy rainfall events, trees coming down, you know, whether they're in the brook or just kind of roadside, right, trees within our right of way. The road crew does the best that they can do with addressing the problem ahead of time. We do have $15,000 in next year's budget to allocate it towards trees, which doesn't get us very far for hiring a professional tree company to deal with trees. So I think we need to look at identifying a way to, you know, expedite cleaning dead and dying trees off the sides of roads as they continue to be an issue.
Right, and then we have the additional issue of trees around cemeteries that
Right.
potentially could drop onto stones and so on.
Correct, and the cemetery commission does have their own tree budget.
Right,
So that is separate from what I'm talking about.
right. But also a very small budget compared to
Right.
what the real need is.
Right, relatively small. I think we did not reappoint a tree warden this year. It would seem to be that we do, it's unclear whether tree warden terms expire or whether they are appointed until a new person is appointed. So what I can do is reach out to who was formerly the tree warden, see if they're interested in continuing that position. If they're not, we'll put it out on the website, see if we can get folks who are interested, and then work with them to identify a way to kind of flag trees and get them cut down. You know, I'm not interested, I think we want to flag and cut down in one motion. We're not looking to flag trees throughout town and then have them flagged for 6 or 8.
So you're looking at
months.
most at-risk areas of town?
Correct. We might go kind of road by road and said, you know, this is an immediate need. And if we need to hire a separate contractor to who can bring the tree down and the road crew can go along during the slow times to clean them up. But I think we need to start addressing it more head on.
Yeah.
And then lastly, speaking of tree work, the piece of equipment that we use the most frequently to clean up trees, much like our lovely 550, continues to be a maintenance nightmare, and that's the backhoe. It's once again broken. You know, it gets used 5 days a week. It's the piece of equipment that gets used for culvert replacements, for cleaning out culvert inlets and outlets, for cleaning up dead and down trees. When it continues to go down for a day or two a week at a time because of broken hydraulic lines or other issues, it creates a real backlog. We do have the opportunity to look at purchasing a new backhoe. It was not planned this year, so we're getting off schedule really quickly with equipment replacement because of both the 550, and if we choose to go forward with the backhoe, it does create a challenge, you know, but so does not having working equipment.
Here's how I see this, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So they really have to have a piece of equipment there to be able to do that job and see. And if they don't have it, they can't get it done. So you're in the middle of something that's really important. I believe that we should get them that equipment.
Yeah, I agree with you, Trace. I mean, I walked on Ellison Road today and saw where the hydraulic line had broken open, and it was just the oil on the road.
Correct.
But then we also incurred a fee to have it towed.
We did.
So we could then fix it in that part. So it's compounding, you know, loss of time for the equipment and then the cost of fixing the equipment. I think we should go out for some bids.
So
there's you need to understand the money,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
So
Because we have an equipment fund.
we do have an equipment fund.
We're spending a lot of money out of it. We need to understand the balance after all the pluses and minuses. And if we're out of money, right, don't we need, I mean, we didn't include this as part of the budget in the town vote, right? So we gotta think hard about, if we don't have enough money.
So what we've done historically with the equipment is we just made our last payment on the loader.
Right.
So we could get a backhoe, similar terms, 5 years, similar payment for 5 years. We can get a municipal, they call it a municipal lease from Mascoma. It's essentially a short-term loan, a 5-year loan. And that softens the blow because it's about $30,000 a year as opposed to the initial upfront cost of, the quote we got today was for $200,000 for a backhoe. So we can get a couple of quotes, but, I think there's an immediate need to have this addressed.
I agree. I'm not going to argue with you at all. I think, to Jim's point, though, what is the impact on the equipment fund? When are we going to be able to get the next 10-wheeler?
Right, so as it stands now, there's about $400,000 in the equipment fund. We've spent, with the F600 is already paid for. That's the cabin chassis that's sitting in the shop. We're gonna have to, so that's already out of that 400,000. We're gonna have to pay about $40,000 more for the plow and body on that, out of that fund, and then about another $140,000 for the 10-wheeler that we purchased. That money probably won't, that may not come out even next fiscal year.
But then we still don't have a 550 replacement.
We still don't have the 550 replacement. However, come the end of June, we're transferring over $160,000, which was in the budget.
And what's the 550 replacement cost?
So it'll be an F600, so it'll be about the same. So it'll be 120 plus or minus. So we do have the money available to us to do it, especially if we take out if we do a 5-year municipal lease or loan.
What's the interest rate on those these days?
So right now it's it's hovering around 5%.
Yeah.
So we can finance it through the dealership. We're also late in the day, we're trying to get interest rates from Mascoma to see if what the interest rates are from there as well.
And what's the next thing that's gonna break?
Well, nothing is the answer I want to give you.
So do you come up with 260 when everything's, like if we bought the grader? Not the grader, the backhoe. We'd have 260 left.
Yeah, about.
Fund.
Yep. Yeah. So again, some of those numbers are, and again, that's July 1, and then we don't know, we're in the budget for the next year though, is a transfer of 235. Historically, and we talked about this last meeting, we've not been transferring over the full amount. If the highway crew goes over on maintenance or parts, for example, they're pulling that out of the equipment transfer. My recommendation would be to do the full equipment transfer, probably half on July 1 and half at the end of the year, to make sure that we have enough money at the end of the year. But it's important that we are fully funding the equipment fund to the best of our ability, because we're seeing that things are expensive.
So are you looking for a decision tonight?
Not tonight, because we're still looking for,
Okay,
this just
so
came up today.
Could you sort of update the capital plan and
Yep.
give us something in writing for our
Yep,
next meeting?
for the next meeting.
Yeah, that would be helpful to me, and I
Yep.
can see it.
Yeah, but again,
Yeah,
this was just
Yeah, no, I
this
get
was
it.
just a today action,
Yeah.
but,
Just so we don't all fall off the chairs when he comes with the actual bill.
right, exactly. It's only $30,000 a year. Yeah, but, again, this is kind of off schedule, but, critical to the,
Yeah, I
to
think
the
Trace
success
said
of the
it very
crew.
well, which is it's a key piece of equipment that's
Yeah.
used every day.
The
on the
advantage,
site.
the other advantage is it's mobile, and there are more than one worker that knows how to operate it. So that's a really key piece of equipment.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah, we don't have a trailer large enough to trailer, so we do have to contract with, local folks to move it around when it breaks down, for example, today. but other than that, they drive it around.
This is not the loader, but it's about the loader. Prior to this Saturday storm, I started noticing on Ellison Road that the riprap rubble that we put in, the 3 or 4 inch stone, was already beginning to get silted over.
Right.
And, you know, we, as a state, haven't figured out we figured out the ditching, you know, we're meeting the mandates of the that go all the way up to the EPA, but we don't know how to maintain those, and so that.
Correct.
I hope we don't have to dig the stones out and put them back in, but.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then lastly, Two Rivers started meeting with the Planning Commission last Thursday to go through the town plan review process to ensure that the 2025, what will be the 2025 town plan, is compatible with all the state goals and then can be approved. So they started with that. They're working through those, everything but the land use chapter. There was a big motion at the last, a big discussion at the last meeting specifically about making the town plan less regulatory. So there had been a move from vision language, which is what town plans typically have, to regulatory language. So from shoulds to shalls, in light of specific cases that had come up in the past couple of years in town. Given that there's this potential second step to do a unified development bylaw, you know, kind of taking that language and softening it and making the town plan more visionary again. So changing some of those shalls back to shoulds.
Why not just keep it the way it is? Because we don't know if it's gonna take a year or 5 to, you know, I mean, doesn't land use have to be voted on at the town level?
To zoning bylaws.
Right, so we may be working on something for a year or 2 to get this voted down.
It does not, I think the board could conceptually approve
Yeah,
it
it depends
without.
on how they move.
Right.
In the past, there's always been town.
Right.
So I don't know, it's up to the planning commission and Two Rivers, I guess, but I would caution on the side of keeping the regulatory language in case we don't get this thing passed.
So Brian and Peter from Two Rivers both articulated this conversation particularly well. You can see it within the first 10 minutes of the Planning Commission video. It's worth watching about why they should move it from shalls to shoulds. Again, kind of the town plan should be the vision document for the town.
Right.
It should not be the tool that is used to implement.
But it's the only tool we have,
Correct.
which is where we keep falling down.
I asked Dan for a comment, please.
Yeah.
Dan, I was just wondering if you could make a comment, because this was a big,
That summarizes
okay.
the discussion pretty well. And we're looking forward to meeting with Kevin because a lot of the stuff I think came from him, and I just want to get, and we all want to see what his thinking is in terms of what it is, and also to find out how this is going to play with any zoning ordinance stuff.
And Kevin's and coming to the June meeting to work on the land use
For our next
chapter.
meeting, yeah.
Okay. I realize this is out of my league because I really have to go to Two Rivers and the Planning Commission on this one, but I also just thought that should we go to should instead of shall, and for whatever reason the bylaws are rejected, we could then modify the town plan. We could move back to a non-aspirational one.
That's one of the arguments.
That's the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
but it
but, I
would be-
mean, you're right, but I mean, why water it down? We could always water it down if we have zoning bylaws.
Yeah, I can't argue one way or the other. I'm not.
I just, we always, don't have the tool we need when we need it. Why not, have a tool?
Why don't we just let Two Rivers and the Planning Commission work it through and see, it could be some areas it's more explicit and definitive in certain sections, and others it's more aspirational. So, I mean, I think, see what you come up with.
Somewhat leapfrog,
Yeah.
whatever you're comfortable with, and then how the town plan and for how long.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. On the list of future agenda items, we have the Three Corners intersection lights, which I hope we'll hear about soon. The North Hartland covered bridges came up earlier with the erosion issue. Cemetery committee, we're waiting on some decisions on that.
Anything from?
Daryl had done some initial kind of mapping of some of the cemeteries, so I can reach back out to Daryl to see what the status of that is.
Okay.
And he was gonna try about the ground truth thing in that contract?
Yes.
Did you ever find anything?
Yeah.
I may have found someone else who might be able to do it.
Okay. Great. Yeah.
We would like to try to.
And Bird Hill Road, have we
There's
heard-
been no communication from Bert.
We have reference to the capital plan.
Yeah, and then, Mr. Ambrose did come in about Lull Farm Lane, so we'll try to schedule a site visit. And do that.
After black fly season and before mosquito season.
Exactly, so so July 4th, basically.
Okay, we do have an executive session. Is there any correspondence?
No course.
Okay,
So we're gonna do 2 executive sessions back to back, or are we gonna?
there are 2, and they're no action, they're just informational.
But they're under different types of.
Different statutes.
Before you throw us out, can I just ask one question? Repeat what you said about the ITW, something, you went through it so fast, I couldn't quite get it.
The case was closed from the Public Utilities Commission. That does not mean they have withdrawn their interest. It means that their advance notice that they submitted has lapsed. If they want to reapply, they will need to submit a new advance notice.
Okay.
And essentially restart the process.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, let's make the motion and take it to
So I'm gonna make a
I think
motion,
it's good news.
I'm gonna make a motion that we
Sounds good to
enter
me.
executive session
I don't wanna have
number 1,
to see it.
BSA 313,
By tomorrow.
A6, to discuss another Campbell request.
I'll second the motion. All in favor, say aye.
I wanted to